Hello everyone, I'm Joel. I am very happy to find you on my YouTube channel and also on my website eol37aeromodeller.com. A few days ago I have published a video describing the realization of the landing gear of my Potez 58. It was the first part, and now on this video I will show you the scale, model details, and finally the final assembly on the fuselage. Let's go! On this first part, I will show you the trim, the covering of the internal legs of the landing gear. And as you can see on this photography, there is first a triangular junction piece and after the covering of the legs that has to be reproduced. Cut out pieces of balsa wood for the junction piece. I then traced the location of the legs and used my Dremel to groove the balsa so that I could insert the piano wire into the balsa. Then check that the piano string fits into these triangular pieces of balsa. I then added the glue to fix the leg in the wooden piece. And it is done now. See now the legs, the formwork pieces are cut from balsa wood the same way as I described before. The location of the piano strings is traced and dug into the balsa to allow for the insertion of the piano string. We check well before gluing. And then come the gluing of the two pieces and the insertion of the piano wires. You have to proceed with attention, and of course to make the same thing on both sides. So the next step was sanding, and I first used a mechanical sanding to remove as much excess wood as possible. And then I finished with a manual sanding to reproduce the shape of leg fairing and to reproduce the shape present on the aircraft in full size. I then added a layer of cellulose dop to waterproof the wood, and once it was dry, I sanded lightly to remove the rough appearance of the balsa wood after the application of cellulose dop coating. Afterward, I cut fiberglass coupons at 25 grams per square meters. And as you can see now, I use Scotch tape because the fiber at this density of fiberglass is very fragile. And tapes allows me to cut it easily without freeing it. Once the coupons are prepared, I glue this fiber with the cellulose filler on the balsa part of the landing gear. When it is dry, simply sand the edges to remove the excess fiberglass. This is a really easy way to remove the excess of fiberglass. The piece is ready now, but before doing the finishing touches, I apply 1 or 2 additional coats of cellulose dop. I then apply the car body filler to cover the wall with a brush. And don't worry about the added weight because it will not be so excessive. During the sanding step that will follow, more than 90% of the coating will be removed. And when it is dry, the coating will be sanded with water, first with coarse and fine sander paper to obtain a very good surface finishing. And I use my finger more than my eyes to get a good idea of the surface condition. So the second part consists in reproducing the model detail of this landing gear and starting with the many rivets to be added. So I diluted wood glue with water to obtain a consistency close to that of milk, and I apply the glue dots with a syringe fitted with a needle and I deposited my rivets both on the fixed and inner legs, but also on the leg with the shock absorbing systems. This is what it looks like when the rivets are set and not yet dry. So the next step will be to cover with paint. But once the paint was deposited, I found that rivets were not visible enough, so I dropped again the glue on the rivet to increase their visibility, and you can now see on this picture the final result after painting. I originally planned to use 3mm piano wire wheel axles, but I was afraid that they wouldn't be strong enough. That's why I cut wheel axle out of 4mm fritted rod. I added a locking nut at one end of the rod that I then screwed into the lower part of the landing gear. The rod is screwed into a tube that I have inserted into the undercarriage leg to replace the existing piano wire. Then, I will now fix the damping leg by tightening the nut, as you can see now on the video. And once it was done, I found that the axle was not positioned to allow the wheel to be vertical, so I used a pair of pliers to deform the rod to get the right angle. So we now move on to the step of assembling the landing gear. It is put in place without fixing it for the moment, and I come to cut the excess rod on the upper part of the landing gear. I fix the damping leg on the ball joint clevis using a lock nut. Of course, I check the correct position and squareness of the landing gear before gluing it in place with some slow epoxy. I use a cloth soaked in alcohol to remove unsightly traces. Let's now prepare the wheel covers by drilling the fairing to allow the axle to pass through. It is done, so to allow this fairing to be fixed in the right position, I personally use wheel stop collets on which I come to drill a hole at 90 degrees of the clamping systems. I then insert a 2mm piano wire that I glue with epoxy, 30 minutes epoxy on the wheel stop collets. Again, I use a cloth soaked in alcohol to remove excess of glue. Dry, I use a cutting off disc to adjust the piano string that I come to bed at 90 degrees. I cut to adjust the length, and it is this bent end that will be inserted into the fairing from the inside. Once the stop ring is screwed onto the shaft, the fairing will remain in the correct position. So I have determined the location of the fairing where the bent end will be inserted. I mark it, and I come to drill at the right dimension. Let's now move on to the final stage with the installation of the fairing on the wheel axle. I insert the fairing, then my wheel lock collar, then I come to put the wheel in place. I just leave the wheel axle a little bit overhanging to be able to add 2 washers between the axle and the other side of the fairing. These washers avoid the friction of the wheel and the fairing and the free rotation of the wheel. I remove the excess of 4mm fritted rod, and now I come to fix my fairing well positioned by tightening the tightening screw on the wheel stop. So it is finished. I am presenting you now some picture of the work completed with the right leg, then the front left, again the right leg but seen from the front, and an overall view of the plane that is beginning to look good. The false engine remains to be done, of course, and here are some pictures I took in the sun to end this visit. I hope you enjoy this video. Feel free to share and to comment and to add a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much, and see you very soon for the continuation of the Potez 58. Bye bye.